Hey guys, hi all, and thank you so much for joining me today on another episode of Muppet Fans Talking. I'm your host, Marcelo Bottaro, and today I have with me a very good friend of mine. Very amazing artist, especially a huge lover of classic cartoons. I have here with me today my good pal, Mr. Will Caroll, on the show. How are you, Will?
I'm doing well. How about you?
Cannot complain, my friend. And we have been talking a few months back about getting him on the show, but of course, some things have gotten in the way. But we managed to get you on, so I'm really glad you're here today, joining me today on another episode of my podcast, Muppet Fans Talking. So, again, thank you so much for joining me.
It is an honor. I love the Muppets. I love you. It's an honor to be here. I can't think of anything else to say right now.
No,
It's a big honor.
Thank you so much, my friend. And we're going to get to talking in a few minutes on some of the things that you're currently working on, as well as how we have crossed paths throughout the years. But first question that's on the blinker right now, what are you currently working on?
Well, at the moment, I'm working on a project of my own. I've been doing some freelance stuff to help finance it, and it's hard to explain exactly. What would you like to know? Like, what I'm doing, or just in general for clients?
Well, basically just an overall type thing, like what's the project that you're working on, just so our listeners can get a good understanding on your idea and what you hope to achieve with it.
Okay. What I'm looking for here is I am developing a sort of variety show in the vein of shows like Sesame Street and Howdy Doody, but for modern kids. It'll have puppets and cartoons and songs and a bunch of hoopla. I mean, there's not much I can explain. It's derivative of a bunch of shows we've obviously grown up with that involve a lot of things we like, including puppets and cartoons. I mean, ever since I was young, I wanted to do a show like that. I mean, back then, like in the 60s and 70s, there were shows lousy with stuff like that. I mean, puppets being brought out and presenting cartoons and certain segments, and I like that. I like variety, and I figured we need more of that, and especially in the day that we live in with Vine and TikTok and other streaming services. I figured little bits like that would be good for a modern age.
It sounds really interesting, man. As well, and plus, I'm right with you on that one because in the old days, and we're going way back, folks. We're going back to like the 60s and 70s. We had shows like they had shows like HR Puff and stuff, the Great Space Coaster, the Banana Splits. Don't count the movie; it wasn't that good. But Eric Balzo was amazing in it. Eric, if you're listening to this, we love you, man. Um, but I'm really glad to hear that this is something that you're very passionate about, especially with such heavy inspiration that's taken from a lot of these old shows that were around back then, and that many people still hold up to this day, to this very day. So I'm wishing you the best of luck on that one.
Thanks. I mean, I'm having Frank Rosario, a good friend.
Of course.
He's making the puppets, and once I have them done, I am hoping to shoot a pilot or a little pitch to help present my idea.
Right. And where do you plan to present this pitch? Do you plan to present it on YouTube, or do a Kickstarter for it, or just send it around, that sort of thing?
That I don't know. I'm just hoping to get like a little proof of concept, nothing crazy or out of the ordinary, just like a little test to see how this would work. Because unlike most shows that are shot, in a sound stage to make it look real,
Right.
I want to try and do this in the real world, like in the woods, because it's a woodland setting. I forgot to mention that.
That is definitely taking it out of the ordinary because, like you said, a lot of those classic shows, they do take place on a soundstage. So doing something like that in the real world, with, like you mentioned, in the woods, that does sound like an interesting idea.
Yeah, I mean, I just figured it would be a little different because every time you watch something lately, you can obviously tell it's a set. So I figured why not have a little bit of it in the real world? I mean, nothing against set designers. They do the best job they can with what they have. But I figure it's about time we start showing that, puppets can exist in the real real world without, having something fake in the background, if that makes sense.
Oh, no. That completely makes sense. In fact, you mentioning that does remind me of a little bit of a mix from the film Happy Time, where they actually did film the puppets out in the real world, but some of the other sets were they were great. They were great sets, but half of the other times they were just heavy computer generated images. So hearing an idea like yours, that does sound like a good concept. And again, I'm wishing you all the best of luck with that one.
Thanks, pal. I mean, it's going to be a long process, but I mean, especially with waiting for the puppets. But I'm willing to do it. I can wait, and once it's done, I hope that I can get some good pals of mine to help, make it, make a little thing.
Hey, we're in touch. If you need anything, give me a holler. All right.
Trust me, you'll be my first choice.
Wonderful. So, going right back into the interview here. So, since the name of the podcast, of course, as you know, is called Muppet Fans Talking, we're going to go way, way back to your earliest memories. What was your very first encounter of the Muppets? And before you mention your answer, of course, many people who I would ask that, they would say, "Oh, I was watching the Muppets on Sesame Street or Muppet Show, Fraggle Rock, that sort of thing." But other times, people have mentioned, "Oh, there were these books, or there were these home video sets." So, what was your very first encounter to that?
Loaded question, but obviously Sesame Street is a starter, but my earliest memory is watching some of the later movies that came out in the 90s, like Muppet Treasure Island and A Muppet Christmas Carol and Muppets from Space. I especially love that one. I saw those movies 100 times, and, for the longest time, you know how in Muppet Treasure Island, Sam the Eagle was playing Mr. Arrow? Yes. My dad thought that was an actual name. He didn't think Sam was playing a character.
You actually hit the nail on the head on that one, because around that time I was, of course, watching Sesame Street as well, but my very first encounter with the actual Muppets, not the Muppets from Sesame Street, was Muppets from Space. Yes, people, I am going to say I enjoy Muppets from Space. Don't hurt me.
And don't hurt me, because I love it. I don't know why people hate it. I mean, I love Gonzo, and that movie just made him love me even more.
Yeah, I mean, Gonzo, he's my favorite character too. And I know Muppets from Space is not everyone's favorite Muppet film, but the reason why I enjoyed it is because it was different. Because usually when you see a Muppet movie, they're always singing and dancing, and they're like on adventures and stuff. Not to say that there isn't an adventure in this one, but it was something different. It wasn't
more.
No, yeah, go ahead.
It's more existential, if you will, because think about it. Gonzo is the most tragic character there is. He's weird. He's eccentric. He's a lunatic. But even he doesn't even know what he is. I mean, everyone's like, "What the hell are you?" Like, he was like, "I don't know." So it finally gets to him in a way, if that makes sense. But it's just interesting seeing a happy-go-lucky character going through an arc, figuring out what he is, where he belongs, and trying to figure out what his place is in the universe, even if it is, out there.
That is actually one of the things I really enjoyed about Muppets from Space, especially, again, Gonzo being my favorite character. He's a chaotic character. He is very chaotic, being the daredevil that he is, but never have I ever thought that they would actually think, what is Gonzo? What is his place in life? Because, there's only one of him. He doesn't really have much family, much like with the other Muppets, but that was a really interesting idea to go with that. And plus, as we both know, Jerry Jewell was one of the head writers for the Muppets in the early days. I'm actually hoping that I'm actually starting to wonder if people didn't know that not only was Jerry Jewell the writer for Muppets from Space, but along with Jerry Jewell was Kirk Thatcher and Joey Mazzarino.
Yeah, those are great guys.
Yeah, so those guys, they really cranked out a pretty good story for Gonzo.
Yeah, I mean, I think people don't like it because, think about it. Rob Schneider's in this movie. Who likes Rob Schneider?
Well, I mean, I'm not gonna say I dislike the guy. I just don't find him that. I just don't find him that funny.
Who does? I also have another memory, if that's okay.
Oh no, sure, sure.
Okay, well, in addition to those three movies and, of course, Sesame Street, the biggest memory I can think of is when I was around 8 years old. I had a friend. I used to live in Staten Island, and I had a neighbor who was also a big Muppet freak, and it was from him that I was introduced to the Muppet Show. And one day I saw 3 episodes, and my life was changed for the better. I couldn't get over it. It was just, I never saw the actual Muppet Show, and I mean, I always thought the Muppets existed in, movies. I didn't think they were at their own weekly thing, like a variety show.
Right, right. And
I saw it. Oh, sorry, what?
oh no, 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 no. That something almost came up, but anyway.
And one day I saw Luke Skywalker, Raquel Welch, and Paul Simon all interacting with a frog, a dog, and a pig, and a chicken. And it was crazy. It was. I didn't even know. That's how I first was introduced to Star Wars. I mean, I hate Star Wars. I don't like it, but it was, from what I saw, it was interesting. I mean, I was like, who are these guys? And because, I thought it was interesting, to say the least. I mean, and from there, about a few weeks later, I bought the first season of The Muppet Show, and I was hooked. Every year when it came out, I kept buying the DVD sets until they stopped. Fuck you, Disney. And I just, it was just interesting just to see all these to see these, characters engaging in different scenarios and settings and songs, all of these interesting celebrities of the time. And let's just say, thanks to the Muppets, I am the only guy I know who likes vaudeville music called numbers from the 1920s.
Nice. And yeah, I mean that's another thing about this generation that just it amazes me that things that were very enjoyable around when for my parents and their grandparents, and it often transitions to some kids of the modern day. Most kids and people are mocked for enjoying those kind of things, but it's actually starting to slowly make a comeback. And so like you mentioned, classic vaudeville music, that's slowly starting to make a comeback. If you think about it, and most people that are teased and made fun of for that, they're probably going to look at themselves and go, "Wow, this is actually popular. Why in the hay was I making fun of this in the first place?"
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, the Muppets were contemporary at the time, but also, out of time as well. This was the 1970s, remember? And
Yeah.
think about it, vaudeville was dead like years ago, but variety shows were still going strong. So somehow they combined both, both methods of entertainment into one half-hour nonsense, but a good half-hour nonsense, and something that's inspired millions and me as well.
Yeah.
It's just amazing.
So, going on with your heavy inspiration of the Muppets, not only with Sesame Street and the Muppet Show, let me ask you this first of all, because I've seen a lot of your artwork. People, if you have not checked out this man's artwork, I'm gonna have him announce the name of his DeviantArt page so you can check it out, because this guy, he does the most amazing drawings I've ever seen. Both original fan drawings. It's incredible. So, did you set out to work in cartoons like as an animator?
Yes, actually. I mean, when I was young, I wanted to try and work at Pixar. I love those movies, and
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of interesting considering, Pete Docter, who directed Monsters Inc. and Up, was also a big Muppet fan, and I've read books saying he used the Muppets as a catalyst for creating his characters, not just with, the arts, but also the way they look and how they move. That's interesting to see, how, considering, 3D artists look at puppets the same way as we do as, 2D artists when it comes to drawing and stuff.
Yeah.
But anyways, I mean, I wanted to work in that type of medium, making, characters and settings that people would like, but I just realized how difficult CG was, and I knew I wouldn't have the patience for that, to model and render and making it look realistic, because if you want to be good in this industry, you have to make something look realistic, even if it's a cartoon monkey.
Yeah.
Anyways, it was. I'm sorry, what?
No, I can. No, as soon as you mentioned that, I agree because I took 3D animation in college, and it was the most stressful, if not the most difficult class I have taken in my life. And I was trained after high school. I took a hand-drawn animation course, and I was trained as a traditional hand-drawn animator. And it was in the era where hand-drawn animation and 2D animation was slowly going away because everything was all CGI.
So, anyways, I mean, I knew CG wasn't for me, so I stuck with, regular traditional. And growing up, when it comes to designing characters, I always looked at stuff like, Warner Brothers and Hanna-Barbera, and of course, the Muppets.
Yep.
When I was young, I basically ripped off the Muppets for my own characters. I had XPs of, Kermit and Fozzie and Gonzo, and it was horrible. It was a horrible time to make characters because when you're young, you just take what you like and incorporate it into, something that's, basically your own, but also a rip-off at the same time. So,
right.
If that makes sense.
No, yeah. I mean, that does make sense. Although I would like to mention this as well, that, and this is a piece of advice that I got from an animator that I used to have enormous. I used to watch his material all the time, but when you're starting out creating characters of your own, and you have a sense of what your style is, definitely draw other mediums, like from comic books and other shows. Draw what you see there. If you keep doing it enough, you will definitely have your own vision of what your original character would look like, along with the inspiration from what you were drawing constantly over and over and over. So, not so much, and this is just me, it's not so much of a rip-off when it comes in the beginning, when you're just like drawing these classic tunes over and over, and then eventually it leads you to creating your own stuff. That right there, folks, those are ideas. That's heavy inspiration. That's the wheels going in motion right there.
Right. I mean, it really took me a long time to get out of the Muppet phase because every idea I thought of at the time when I was in high school up until now, I actually stopped, was making a variety show like the Muppet Show. Because, a bunch of lunatics under a theater putting on a show, everything going wrong. Every idea I thought of was some type of variation of that idea.
Right.
And it just wasn't working for a while, so I decided to branch away from that, get away from, all of that, and just try and work on something a bit more unique while keeping it, traditional in the sense that, this is something people can look at and be like, oh, I think of the Muppets, like, something nostalgic, but at the same time, nothing blatant, because think about it. I saw a post by Clayton Robert, you know him, he's a great artist.
Oh, of course.
He's a great Muppet artist.
Yeah.
He is vocal with people who want to get into puppetry to not rip off Jim Henson, because think about it, Jim Henson did not create the wheel when it came to puppetry. He helped push it, because I know this is a Muppet podcast, but if it weren't for Bill Tillstrom, we wouldn't have the Muppets.
Yep.
Because he helped inspire millions and millions of creative minds to help get puppetry the way it is today.
Yeah.
People like, of course, Jim Henson and Fred Rogers, and he helped them inspire them to help get puppets into the modern culture. And I'm sorry, I'm losing my point.
No. What you were saying there was good. That you have an idea to create something, and you have inspiration from other mediums. Basic example of the Muppets. Definitely stick with that concept, but don't turn that idea into something that inspired you in the beginning. Always go for the original route.
Yeah, I mean, it was really blatant back then in high school, because I had my own versions of Kermit, like, a put-upon boss and a stupid comedian. Like, I love Fozzie, but he's a bit, dense. And a lunatic who loves bashing himself against walls, and like it was really blatant. Even if it wasn't the Muppets, it was still them in a sense. But now I feel comfortable in the sense that I can do a variety show, not have it be, you know, everything going wrong in a theater. So I could do something different and still keep those roots as it is.
Exactly, which is the way it should be. That's the way it should be. Like when you come up with something like that, and in the beginning you don't know if this concept is going to work, but it takes years and years and years to try to think, okay, what if I switch it over? What if I switch this idea, or maybe I change this idea, so on and so forth, until you're comfortable with what you originally had in mind, you know? And of course, as you mentioned, and this is for everyone out there, if you're going to set out to do something that's within this field and you had enormous inspiration from other shows and movies that you love, go for your idea, but don't ever make it the idea that you're watching. Like Will said, don't be like Jim Henson. Be you. Because you're never going to be anyone else but yourself. And the ideas and characters that you have comes from you. Yes, the inspiration does come from Jim and Frank and Jerry, but overall, it comes from you.
Very profound, pal.
I get very spiritual when I say those things. I mean, after I say those things, I just stop, take a breather, and go, whew, that actually took a lot out of me.
Seriously, that was amazing, though.
Yeah.
And, okay, so you get my point, though. Just back then, it was just blatant, but now I feel comfortable with creating more unique characters that also feel familiar in the sense that people can look up to them. Exactly
right. So, as we went on with that. With the wonderful stories that we were sharing, back to the questionnaire, we always round our
questions.
Yeah, yes, of course.
Back to the questions now.
Of course. Let's see here. No, I hate to ask this, but you go ahead. Thank you. So, this is actually a pretty obvious question because you did mention it already. This one is, which Muppet character do you connect with the most? And, of course, in the beginning you did mention Gonzo is your favorite Muppet. Do you connect with Gonzo a lot?
Yes, I actually do connect with Gonzo because, like I said, he's crazy, he's eccentric, he'll do anything to make himself happy, even if no one else gets it. But he's also profound and deep. He's like Tigger in a sense, because you think about it, they're both lunatics, and they both do their own thing, and no one understands them. But, oh, look at them, they're crazy. Who touched them? But they also have moments that can be reflective. I mean, not just with Muppets from Space, but even on the original Muppet Show, Gonzo had moments that felt, real. Like, he wasn't just a lunatic doing stupid stuff for the sake of art. He was also a person that felt emotions and felt, sad. Like, Did you see that clip where he sung "My Way" and he started crying?
Yep.
And Kermit came out to comfort him.
Yeah, I remember that.
That felt real. That was emotional. I mean, I'm tearing up just thinking about it. But moments like that just shows that even the funniest of characters can be very human and profound.
Exactly.
And also, in addition to Gonzo, if it's okay, I have another Muppet that I connect to.
Oh, sure.
Rolf. I am in love with Rolf.
Rolf the dog.
Yeah, I mean, he's basically who I want to be in life. I mean, I'm like Gonzo in the sense that I'm high-strung and I'm like fidgety and jumpy, but Rolf is basically the type of guy who just takes it easy. He's all mellow and he just plays the piano to his heart's content. I mean, he's so calming. I wish he was real and he was a therapy dog, because I could do with a dog like Rolf.
Finally, we get more acknowledgement for Rolf the dog, which we never get on the podcast. So this is wonderful. This is wonderful.
Yes, I mean, seriously. I mean, I love all the crazy characters like Fozzie, because I relate to Fozzie too, since I'm a comedian who tells bad jokes. But Rolf is somebody I really would, I love Rolf. There's so much else I can say. I mean, he can be funny at times, even if his jokes are worse than the Bears. But still, he's deep and he's more adult as compared to the rest of the characters, and he's somebody I know anybody can relate to. I mean, even kid and adult alike can like that dog.
Yeah, exactly. So we got your favorite Muppets on here. Now we're gonna switch over to favorite puppet characters. Even though we're on the topic of Muppets, we're also on the topic of puppets and the world of puppetry in general. And many people have their own favorite non-Henson puppet characters, which I found out throughout doing these podcasts is incredible. So, do you have a favorite? Do you have a favorite non-Henson Muppet puppet character?
Well, let me think about this for a second, because what I like might be a bit obscure to some people, because when I look at puppets, I mean, I love, Jim Henson was the next guy, but lately I've been looking at puppets from like the early days of television, from the 50s to the 60s, and I find those characters to be interesting as well. Not that the Muppets aren't interesting, but I kind of find these guys interesting too, like Cuckoo, Fran, and Ollie. I really like the characters in there, because if you think about it, that was like a proto-Muppet show, just a bunch of guys in a theater trying to put on a show, and it was interesting to see that type of concept done years later, and I can see how Jim was inspired by that to make the Muppet Show.
Yeah.
Like Kukla, I really like Kukla because he's cute, he's interesting, and I mean he's a little guy, but yet he gets so angry, and just it's endearing seeing him, being all sweet with his cast and trying to get things together. He's like the glue to hold everything together. Exactly like Kermit. So, I mean, for those who don't know, Kukla is like a little clown, and he's the runner. He runs the theater, the Kukulpolitan Players, and I mean that's just very interesting. Seeing a clown being the head of a production and being taken seriously by his friends.
Oh.
I
was gonna say thank you so much for explaining to our listeners who Kukla, Fran, and Ollie were, because I definitely know who Kukla, Fran, and Ollie are. Those that are listening may not know what the hey Kukla, Fran, and Ollie is. So thank you so much for explaining that.
Should I explain it more, because it's a bit more interesting than that? But
please do.
For those who don't know, Kukla, Fran, and Ollie was basically the first television show made with puppets in the late 40s and mid 50s. It was basically, like I said, like the Muppet Show, with a bunch of puppets putting on a show with the titular Kukla, Fran, and Ollie. Kukla and Ollie were puppets, and Fran was a beautiful Fran Allison, a beautiful singer and comedian in her own right. And every week, these characters would get together, and it was all improvised, if you can believe it. Every show they done was completely off the cuff. They didn't have a script or anything. They would sing, engage in interesting moments, and that you can see the groundwork for other puppet shows of that like, again, the Muppets. But to me, it's interesting because they're just now coming up online, and people are starting to know these characters more. And I've been looking at that type of puppetry and way characters are written for my own thing, but that's neither here or there. So
exactly, yeah. I mean, on that topic, I recently was checking out the show The Great Space Coaster. I love that show. I've never seen The Great Space Coaster in my life. Maybe I saw like a little clip of it on television a long time ago, and I just didn't remember what it was. But watching that show for the first time in full, and for me, I see these puppets. They're not the traditional cutesy Muppet. They don't have that traditional cutesy Muppet look, which with my work, I always try to go for that route of don't make them so Muppet-like. And so seeing shows like The Great Space Coaster, it's another inspiration to finding your own style.
Yeah, interesting fact about The Great Space Coaster. Kermit Love, you know him?
Of course, yeah. He was Kermit Love was one of the builders for Jim Henson. He built Big Bird and Thog from the Great Santa Claus Switch.
Yeah, I mean, he actually came up with that show, and he built most of the characters. It's interesting how a man who worked for Henson can also make puppets that are, work functionally as the same as Henson, but also different in look and style as well.
Oh, yeah.
Because think about it, these characters, they would have, articulated mouths, they would blink their eyes one at a time, and it was interesting to say the least. I mean, and some didn't even have functioning mouths to begin with. So it was interesting seeing how a character kind of, emote without having a mouth to open. That's also what I like about Kukla, because none of these characters had functioning mouths. It was like Mr. Rogers in a sense, because, they were all stock hand puppets, and they didn't have an articulated mouth like we're used to, hello, the mouth can open and control the puppet, which is his hand. But I find it more interesting when you see a character that doesn't have a mouth, that doesn't have a way of speaking, has a blank expression, but also to me, that's the best type of puppet, because it can also be emotive. You can emote any type of emotion onto it. It can be angry and sad or anything, but all through just a blank face, because people can read that more than just having a happy face saying, "Oh, I'm angry." It feels more real, if that makes sense.
No, I agree. I agree. In fact, that's kind of puppetry 101 right there. That, when you put on a puppet and you try to, you look at the structure of that character, and you can pretty much have this character have any emotion, just add all the emotions and feelings into one character that doesn't have a lot of flexible movement within the face or with the eyes, but you can make it real. And that's the one thing that I love about it, is that they do have limited facial expressions, but the emotions, it can make it so real, and it can connect with a lot of people.
Yeah, but getting back to the question, my favorite, I have other puppet characters that I like that are obscure, if that makes sense. I love the BJ and Dirty Dragon show. For those who don't know, it was an old Chicago show from the 60s. It was a very popular show. It had very interesting and unique puppets that were more cartoony in a sense. They weren't felt and foam like with Henson, but I like Dirty Dragon because he was the main character because he was a dragon by the name, and he was loud, obnoxious. He had smoke coming out of his nose.
He what?
What?
He what? He had actual smoke come out of his nose?
Yes. I mean, he was a dragon, and every time he spoke, he had puffs of smoke coming out of his nostrils, and he would always have this gravelly voice, what do you know? Flying on the mail. He was a mailman, and he ate all the mail. He was a cookie monster in a sense, because he would eat the mail, that he wouldn't give the mail out, and he would always have smoke coming out. He was so loud and ferocious, but it was hilarious just looking at that.
Okay, you need to send me a few clips of this show so I can check it out for myself. This sounds interesting.
And what I like most about this is Bill Jackson we're talking about. He's a great man, and thankfully he's still alive. But he, instead of using foam and felt and fur for his puppets, right there, he would use latex. He would sculpt the heads of clay, and he would mold them out of latex like he was making a mask. And because of that, the puppets would be more expressive and more lively. They would actually look like cartoons brought to life, which helps considering he was a cartoonist. And seeing that vision brought on a cheap show like this is amazing. I mean, all the characters look like something that popped out of a sketchbook, and they look. People think they're creepy, but I don't think that.
You definitely need to send me a few episodes of this show so I can check it out for myself. This sounds creative, and it does sound like something I would get inspiration from.
Trust me, pal. After this is over, I'll send you whatever I can find. You
learn something new every day, people. Don't let that stop you. You learn something new every day. I just learned something new today.
I'm kidding. I'm not kidding about the smoke thing. Seriously, they would have tubes that would be used for heart surgery to help get the smoke out of the nose just right.
Again, you got to send me a few episodes of this. I need to see this for myself.
All right. Quick fire here. I mean, another puppet I like. This will be my last one. I love Bird Call. Calvin Lester is making an amazing thing with his own project called Bird Call, and
yes.
I like Luckle. He's one of my favorites, along with Foul Owl. They're like the perfect odd couple. It's like the Bert and Ernie, but of our day, but with feathers.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I had the chance to see the show, the full show, on their YouTube channel. That it is a really good show, and for them to keep going with this project, the Bird Call, it's wonderful, and there was a lot of passion, there's a lot of heart that went into this, and they managed to do it. So when I see stuff like that, I always think to myself, you know what? Just keep going, just keep developing what you're doing, because sooner or later it's gonna come to light. And a show like Bird Call, that really gave a lot of inspiration for that. So for everybody on Bird Call that's listening to this right now, all the best to you guys.
Yeah, you deserve it.
All right. So.
Okay then.
All right. So just what? Oh yeah. Oh, we actually covered a lot, but we got two more here before we let you go. Now.
All right.
Now, with you coming up with your own concepts and characters for your projects, you've of course gotten a lot of advice from other artists that inspired your work to be more stronger. Do you have any advice for anyone out there that wants to go into not only with what we do, but with anything in general, like any good life advice for anyone that wants to pursue what they do?
All I can say is, don't ever let life beat you down. I know that's cliche, but seriously, don't. I mean, sure, you might have days where you feel like, I can't do this. Why do I bother? Because you know out there's going to be at least one person who's going to look at your art, and somehow, in some way, that'll make their day. Just keep doing what you love, even if nobody understands it, and just keep going. No matter if anyone doesn't like it, who cares? That just shows you're doing something right. Just keep doing what you love. Don't let anybody else tell you otherwise. Especially don't let your parents tell you otherwise too. Because sure, they'll love you, but just seriously, don't ever let them tell you what to do when it comes to art. Did they study? No, they didn't. You learned how to do you. Just keep doing what you love, and that's all I can say. Just never let life get you down. Even if it seems very difficult and you feel like quitting, don't. I mean, you basically summed it up perfectly, pal, because I wish I could remember what you said exactly, but I was having a very hard day, and you brought me up just like that.
Oh, yeah. You were, you were working on a project I think it was a few months back, and you weren't really feeling the most, you weren't really up to it. You weren't feeling like you were up to it. And I told you that, even though you're not up to it, you still got to go in and you got to try. You got to try. Even if it ends up good, if it ends up great, if it ends up good, if it ends up bad, if it ends up terrible, you at least went in and you tried. Because if you didn't try, chances are something like that is never going to come up again.
Yes. I'm lucky I got through it, and it was a good experience, and because of that experience, I have what's the word I'm looking for here? I now feel confident to make my own thing. I mean,
there you go.
I appreciate how, independent artists are now trying to make their own, life, make their own work, to get themselves out there, doing their own thing, not worrying about the networks, and just doing what they love and helping everyone else, likes along with them.
Exactly.
The best thing you can do is at least know you're having fun when you create something. Don't let anyone else say otherwise.
Exactly. If you're not having fun doing what you love, then what is it? What is it then? That's what I always think.
Yeah.
So one more thing. No.
Yes.
Oh no. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. I don't have anything else to say. Next question.
So one more thing. So actually, we reached down to the very last question here. So, you know what? Thankfully, just a few seconds. thank God I always edit some of these things. So some of the ones that were just like, oh, this or that, I always edit them together and I make it clean. This part's not going to be on the podcast, of course. But okay, here we go. So yeah, we actually reached down to the very, very end of the interview. Again, Will, I'm really glad that we got you on here. But before we let you go, I have one more question to ask you, and this is the one that I always ask my friends that appeared on this podcast. Now, of course, we all have a certain moment with the Muppets, and it would come from anywhere. It would either come from an episode, or a film, or a live event, or even a toy that they had, or a VHS tape or a book. Do you have a favorite Muppet moment?
Well, let me think. That's very hard because I love everything with these characters. It's hard to just pinpoint one because I mentioned how Gonzo sung My Way. I love that, but just on its own, I'd say the end of the Muppet movie, right when everything goes wrong, when Kermit finally gets to Hollywood, and a spark of light comes in and a rainbow comes down, and you see all the Muppets together. Just that gets to me. Seeing every Muppet made at the time coming together in this moment, just singing their hearts out. That gets me every time. I love it. It's just so heartwarming, and every time Kermit starts singing, I start crying. It's just beautiful.
I know which one you're talking about. The one at the very end of the film where everything goes wrong, and then there's that little light, and then there's that light that shines up on the roof of the studio, and a giant rainbow comes down, and the camera zooms out, and all of the Muppets are there singing at the very end of the film. And we're talking not only the Muppets from the Muppet Show, but from Sesame Street and so many other things that Jim worked on in the early days. It's a really beautiful moment right there.
Yeah, I mean, I might have some others, but at the moment, that's all I can remember. But not that I don't forget anything. It's just at the moment, that's the biggest moment at this time that I find very profound.
And you know
I
what?
just love moments like that. Just very soft and comforting. Just seeing all these characters together in one place and just knowing that things are going to be okay in the long run.
Yep. You know, moments like that you shared, that really does define your true character. That you're humble, you're kind-hearted, you're a sweet guy, and you have an enormous, enormous talent. And I know from seeing a lot of your work, you're definitely going to go far. You are definitely going to go far, and with the advice that you gave tonight, it says it all. It really does say it all. And so, with that, ladies and gentlemen, we come down to the end of another episode of Muppet Fans Talking. But before we go, I'd like to thank my friend Will Caroll for joining me today on this very special episode. Will, again, thank you so much for joining me today.
It was my pleasure, my fellow. I love this, and thank you for bringing me on. I had a wonderful time.
It was wonderful. It was a great chance for me to sit down, talk to you about your craft and what it is that you do and why you love to do it, which is a big part for anyone out there that wants to go ahead and pursue this. So again, Will, thank you so much for joining me today, and thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll see you next time on another episode of Muppet Fans Talking.
Bye.